Welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket.
I'm Davius.
This is episode number 17. And today we have a special guest. So if you've done a fair amount of Battlegrounds, and you're probably very familiar with this player because you've likely seen their name on your death recap countless times. If you despise Magsorks in PvP and Battlegrounds specifically, this guy might be the reason why. Seriously, one of the best PvP players I know in this game, the great Caliban. How's it going, dude?
Pretty good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome to have you here. Just to give players an idea of who you are, do you want to just tell us a little bit about like your experience in this game, how long you've been playing, the kinds of stuff you do, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I've been playing since 2016, early 2016, I think. And currently co-GM of Adastra with a Haughty Tiger. I'm mostly a PvP player. Used to do a bunch of PvE, but kind of burned out on that the last few years. So mostly just BGs, sometimes some Cyrodiil. But it's a good way to relax after work, you know?
Oh yeah, certainly. That's mostly what I do after work, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned Adastra. That's a guild that actually all three of us are in, and it's a Battlegrounds specifically focused guild. A lot of really talented players in there, and I really, it's honestly like my favorite guild that I've been in.
Yeah. I always joke that if you go into a battleground and there's a bunch of Adastra players in there, then that's when you know it's about to be a serious match.
Yeah, it's both it's a good and a bad feeling, you know, because it's like okay, I must be getting pretty good, right? Like I'm in here with these guys, but then it's like, all right, this is going to be like I'm going to be scraping and clawing for every moment that on this map. Yeah,
that's how you know you've hit high MMR on the ultimate character.
You start seeing Adastra members.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, it's a good guild, and I've mentioned in guild chat before that as far as PvP guilds go, I've always been so impressed with how just positive and non-toxic, and you guys really make an effort to keep that stuff out of there, and it's really cool. But it's not like over the top; like we still razz each other and talk shit and stuff. So yeah, it's a good balance. It's a good guild.
That's been a fine line for us. Like we have to control hey, you can talk a little salt and stuff. You can't go so far as to you're actually insulting people. I think we've handled it well.
Yeah.
We've picked 4 people total in the year we've been around. Yeah,
it's pretty good. It's really nice. And God help the people that get on Adastra's bad side when they're in battle crowds.
Shout out to Clock Cycle.
It's a brave thing to do for those poor souls.
Yeah. Well, yeah, anyway, Caliban, awesome to have you here, man. I've been wanting to chat with you just about ESO for a while outside of just text chat in the game. And this being an episode where we're planning to talk quite a bit about Battlegrounds, I thought this is the perfect time to bring you on. So thanks again for being here, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's fun to be here.
I definitely plan to be a better PvPer by the end of this episode, just by talking with you guys.
Well, if you listen to some of the people who don't like me, I'm class carried, so you probably won't learn anything.
That's the secret. Just play Magsork.
Just play Magsork.
Okay, so let's move on and talk about a few announcements. So, number one, the podcast Scrollin' is now on Spotify. So if you'd like to listen to your podcast there, you can find it there. I'll put a link to that in the description, or you can just search for Scrollin' on Spotify. Remember, that's with an IN apostrophe at the end, no G, and it'll come right up there. Next announcement, we are so close to having our guild bank open. All right, so last episode we had 9 members, and we asked for that 10th member so that we could open our guild bank then. So we got that 10th member, and not moments later, someone dropped out of the guild, putting us right back down to 9. So we had a guild bank for less than 60 seconds. It was glorious.
Oh. For 2 seconds.
but no more. So we need one more.
One
more member of Stoon's Goon. So just hit us up in game at Ketsparrowhawk, at Starjumper. We'll get you in there. We'll get you your free set of Stoons and all of that. So let's talk about the Gold Vendor a little bit here. As a reminder to anyone who doesn't know, the Gold Vendor appears at your faction's home base in Cyrodiil every weekend, and they have a random assortment of gold jewelry and monster sets that you can buy for alliance points or gold. So if you're like me and you have a ton of alliance points and you don't really do much with them at all, the Gold Vendor is a good opportunity to actually do something with that currency that's just sitting there. And this week's actually a really good week. So we got Trappings of Invigoration Necklace. This is one of my favorite sets. I'm using this set on my Stamina Templar right now, which unfortunately I just golded out her necklace last week. So,
Perfect timing.
Yeah, perfect timing. Spider Cultist Necklace is Greymoor's Birthright Necklace. That's the one that gives you 400 spell damage to your frost damage abilities. Sadly, there's not a lot of frost damage, options in the game. Queen's Elegance Necklace. This is the one that it used to just buff your light and heavy attacks, and now they changed it so that your light attacks decrease the cost of your next active ability by 10%. And then when you do a heavy attack, it increases your next direct damage attack by 2610. So it's like a sustain and damage set sort of hybrid situation. Now, I honestly think it's probably better than it was before, and it's probably flying under some people's radar. But I could see this being, it's basically Seducer as long as you're light attack weaving, and then you can line up a heavy attack to really juice up your burst combo. It could be good.
Particularly good if you're using something that it procs multiple times on, like a 2610 flat amount, procs on each jabs or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Totally. Or maybe like would Force Pulse, would that 2610 apply to each hit of Force Pulse, I wonder?
I haven't tested it, but it might work like Draugr can.
Yeah.
Same thing with the dual wield spammable too.
Yeah, totally. And then the monster sets, we got Vykosa's Shoulders and Krog's Shoulders. And that's kind of it for the Gold Vendor. So we'll move on to some news and patch notes. There's not a ton of news this week, but there is a little bit. They did a Crown Store showcase for June 2020. So if you want to see a preview of the stuff that you can expect to see in the Crown Store this month, I'll put a link in the description so you can go check that out. A couple of new costumes that looked pretty cool to me. A new Scourge Harvester arms pack. Davis, didn't you get this Second Legion arms pack?
Didn't
you buy that?
I'm possibly going to buy it.
I thought you bought it.
Haven't decided yet. I'm possibly.
Okay. Oh, my bad. I thought you bought it. Well, it looks really cool. Just some other stuff. Crown Store, There was some maintenance this week, mostly very minor stuff, a few fixes for the Kind's Aegis trial. Most notably, there was a bug that caused only one treasure chest to appear in the entire trial. So they fixed that.
That's so awesome.
So now there's a normal amount of treasure chests. Some fixes for antiquities. This is what I was really hoping would happen this maintenance cycle. So thankfully it happened. They fixed an issue where some antiquity encasements, particularly the large gold filigreed treasure chest, could have their visuals desync with their placement in the excavation site. I'm sure you guys have ran into this when you're trying to excavate mythic items where you uncover the chest. It's uncovered. You can see it. It's all there, but it's not registering. It's not letting you have it, and you'll fail the excavation, and you have no idea why. And it's because it's misplaced. And the way to actually uncover it, it would be visually uncovered, right? Like you'd look at it, and it looks like it's not actually uncovered, but turns out you got it. So you had to play this weird mind trick with the game to even uncover it. It was so frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially like the first time, like I was really going after this wild hunt ring, and I was really excited about it. And I'd get this lead, I'd get so excited, I can't wait to go excavate this thing. It's going to be so awesome, and it's just like frustration after frustration after frustration, and then I just go to bed frustrated. I don't have my mythic item. It was really annoying. I finally, did some research online and figured out how to work around it, but not a good thing. They fixed it, thank goodness. They also fixed an issue, Davis, I know that you were having where when you get kicked out of an excavation because you get locked into combat, your UI messes up and your character can't like move properly, right?
Yes, this was the frustrating bug that was happening to me, is that whenever you would get attacked, you'd be right in the middle of a dig, and then you'd get attacked, it'd pull you out of that, and you couldn't use any abilities, and you could only walk backwards. You couldn't go side to side, you couldn't go forward. Your character could only walk backwards and not perform any action. It was so frustrating.
Could the mouse still move your camera around so could you still steer your character like that?
Yeah, you could still look around, you just couldn't, you could only walk backwards.
That's awesome.
It was such a weird bug.
Yeah, each new patch, I'm always sort of, I'm excited about all the new stuff we get, and then I'm also kind of a little bit excited to see how interesting this new batch of bugs is going to be.
That was a unique one for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of bugs, if I could bring one up that probably affects most of the people we play with, Battlegrounds health bars don't show up in half the BGs.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that one a lot lately too. That one is frustrating.
I see that in Imperial City a lot as well. Yeah, it is frustrating. So why don't we talk a little bit about what we've been up to this week, and I'll kick us off. So once again, my Stab at a Templar, Old Betsy, is finished. And this is like, I think the third time I've said this on this podcast that this character is finished. But I was expecting these mythic items to take way longer to get a hold of. But it took like 2 or 3 days to get a hold of it. So I had a build video going. I was almost finished. I basically had to scrap it, throw it away, and start all over again because I got the real version that I really wanted. So yeah, now it's really done for real. And the video is finished and it's on YouTube and it's all done. That's done. So good deal. It's an awesome build. This is my favorite character. I've said it 100 times. Stamina Templar is my very favorite spec to play in PvP. And the way I like to play it is very speedy and fast and agile, very like roly-poly like. And I feel like in the past, I've always had to sacrifice a fair amount of damage in order to pull off that kind of play style. But this patch, there's just new tools and stuff where I feel like I'm not having to sacrifice damage at all. It hits harder than ever and still totally a roly-poly. So I'm happy with it. So yeah, she's using that Ring of the Wild Hunt, and that's pretty awesome. And that's the one I was most excited about. But honestly, I think the one I'm even more excited about now that I have it is this Snow Treaders. Have either of you guys gotten a hold of the Snow Treaders yet?
I haven't used it, but I've helped some people test it to see if you can proc other things while it's active. Like, what's that set that procs when you're snared or rooted?
Oh, is it Bloodthorn?
The healing set. There's a set that heals you when you're snared or rooted. Tested that to see if it worked with it.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I was, like, when I was first reading about this item, I guess I just misunderstood or misinterpreted what it did. And I basically assumed that it wouldn't apply to like ground effects like caltrops or Wall of Frost. I was assuming like, I'm still going to get snared by those things. But no, you're immune to those things too. So I'm super pumped about these things. When it says, so you're immune to snares and immobilizations that cannot be cleansed. And I looked into it, and mostly what that means is like core game mechanic sort of things, like when you go into crouch to sneak, you're slowed down there. The Snow Treaders aren't going to, bypass that. It's like that kind of stuff. But like most of the stuff that you're going to run into from players, you're going to be immune. And it's pretty awesome, especially if you spec into speed that doesn't require sprint. So I put these Snow Treaders on it's a Stamina Necromancer bow build. And it's a Wood Elf, Swift Jewelry using a Jailbreaker, which gives you minor expedition at all times. So he moves as fast as someone sprinting with major expedition, but he doesn't sprint, and he has these Snow Treaders on, so you can't slow him down. It's freaking awesome. It's seriously really awesome.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
What else I've been doing this week? I did the Kind's Aegis trial just on normal, but it was really fun. I was surprised at how difficult it was. We actually wiped out a couple of mob pulls. Not that we weren't like an S tier group or anything like that, but it was fun and we got through it. I enjoyed it. Did a little Imperial City last night, you and me, Davius. I don't know if we had fun or not. Did we?
I don't know. I've been asking myself that same question. It was
Man, it was a spectacle. It was a sight to behold, that's for sure.
yes.
So we play on EP, Ebonheart Pact, and man, it was just an ocean of Daggerfall Covenant all over the map, and you couldn't go anywhere, man, without just a giant blue blob of these people like just spilling out of doors and windows and everything. You know, just like a colony of ants. And we were talking earlier, like we normally enjoy kind of outnumbered fights. We're usually looking for that sort of thing, but this was just like way, way too much, man. There was no way you couldn't kite anyone through any choke points or anything like that because they're there too. You know, there's nowhere to go.
There was a lot of talented players in that Zerg too. You know,
that's the other thing about it.
I totally got rocked by Grim Hollow last night.
Yep, he was in there.
I know Mizzle likes to play with them as well.
Yeah, it's that's another thing about it is oftentimes you see these big groups and the really strong players are kind of off separate from that. They're looking to try to get a 1v1 or maybe a 1vx. But man, a lot of these Zerg people were themselves strong players, and that made it extra hard. But it got me thinking though about the Imperial City situation right now. You know, Davius, you and I always talk about how this is kind of our new PvP home right now, right? Because Cyrodiil performance is not great, right? And it seems to basically just be getting worse all the time.
Yep.
We can't group up in battlegrounds anymore. So if we want to play together and have a good PvP experience, Imperial City is about the only option. And now we have these this Malakath Band of Brutality, right? This mythic item that everyone is salivating over and like really wanting to get their hands on. And one of those leads to get that is in Imperial City. You have to go to Imperial City to get it.
I was just gonna say, maybe that was the highlight of our Imperial City last night, is that we got that lead.
We did get that lead, and that was super sweet. Yeah.
Trying to look for the positives.
Yeah, but I would say probably of all these new items that we got with this patch, that's probably the one that people are going after the most. And so I think more players are just going to Imperial City than ever just to find this lead. And then once they're there, they're realizing that, oh, this is a good PvP experience. Maybe I'll just hang out here a while. And they're having the same realizations we had. You know, Cyrodiil has the bad performance. I can't group with my friends in Battlegrounds. This is it right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably plus it was Friday night, so you know it's just huge population on Friday night anyway. But I wonder if we're going to be seeing kind of a renaissance in Imperial City, and it's going to become more and more populated as time goes on.
As much as Zoss messes up sometimes, that's a really great change for the game if Imperial City comes back.
Oh yeah,
some of the most fun PvP in the game.
Yeah, it's such a great zone, such a great design.
It's fantastic, and it's really, I think, a testament to this antiquities thing. As skeptical as people, myself included, were about it, a really awesome side effect. This is one of them. Is that it's breathing new life into the whole, basically the entire rest of the game. All this content. I mean, even things like Imperial City is really cool, but even like when you're just going to an excavation site and all you're doing is digging up something out of the overland zones, they send you to these places that you probably haven't seen since, you know, the first time you played through the main story, or maybe you've never seen it at all. And you can tell that they really are selecting these locations that were lovingly crafted. You know, they're beautiful. Like every time I find one of these dig sites, I seriously stand there and look around and just sort of appreciate the scenery, because I can tell they chose that spot. They wanted me to appreciate the work that was done here, you know, years and years ago.
Yeah. I think another cool side effect too is just, you know, if anybody doing antiquities or anybody roaming around the map, you can go to these public dungeons that you maybe haven't been to in a while, or even delves. You know, you go in these areas you haven't been in so long, and it's just, you just see this population. There's just so many players roaming around. I did a public dungeon this week that I hadn't been to since, I mean, before I even hit max level on my first character. And it was really cool kind of going back and kind of remembering, oh, I remember this public dungeon. And there was probably, 10 to 15 other players in there kind of farming. It was just kind of cool to see kind of what you're saying. These old areas kind of new life, breathed into them.
Yeah, like just random world bosses that no one before would even bother messing with. You'll go there now and there's like 10 people standing around waiting for it to spawn, And even like, say I want to queue up for a dungeon that's not a pledge today. I have a much higher chance of actually getting the queue to pop because other people are doing these dungeons to get leads from them and stuff. Just all around, there's just so many positive side effects from this Antiquities thing. I'm such a huge fan of it.
Yeah, for a system that on its surface looked like a mobile game, mini game, it's really, really good.
Yeah, exactly. That was the criticism. Is like, oh man, why are you putting a mobile game into ESO? Like, I want a new class, I want a new skill line, And I was kind of having those same sort of thoughts, but now that it's here and we're seeing the effects that it has, I'm a big fan.
Much better than Sigic. Much better.
Yeah. All right, so that's all I've been up to this past week. Davies, why don't you tell us what you've been up to, man?
So like you said, we had a grind in Imperial City last night. That was unique.
Humbling.
Yeah, humbling. There you go. Mainly, most of my focus has shifted to my Stamsork build. Yeah. This is, you have joked all week, this is basically my new favorite character right now. This was kind of on a back burner build that I was working on, but I just kind of started tinkering. And Antiquities, I got the Torque of Tonal Constancy first, and I'm using that on this Stamsork build. And when I got that, I kind of went full into this build, and man, this has been such a fun character. Just kind of a reminder of the build. I'm doing Ancient Dragon Guard, and heavy for the armor, and then for the jewelry and weapons, I'm doing the Eternal Vigor set. And then, like I said, I have the Torque of Tonal Constancy, and then I'm doing a one piece of Swarm Mothers just to get the double max stats. But this build has been so much fun. I've done a whole bunch of battlegrounds this week. I've hopped into Imperial City a couple of times, and
it's a what is it? A heavy armor dual wield?
It's a heavy armor, dual wield front bar, sword and shield back bar. Okay. And it is, man, I'm having so much fun. It's working out really well. Yeah.
I love the concept of the build. Like, everything is this 50-50 thing.
Everything
right?
works. Everything works above 50 or below 50, all of it.
Yeah, every armor set that you have, even the one-piece monster set, is this like half and half situation. Yes. I really like it.
It's a very balance of yin and yang type of build. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a successful build with testing it out. We kind of originally tested it out in Imperial City a couple weeks ago, but now that I've actually been able to go through, I can say the build is completely finished out, all the skills and everything.
You got your Dawnbreaker.
We got the Dawnbreaker, got the Morph. I've just had so much fun with this build. I have pretty much been playing on this character, solely just this character all week long. And just, like I said, just been having so much fun.
Everyone remembers their first Stamsork, right?
There you go.
Hard to beat a Stamsork for fun.
Really. Super fun.
Just so much, mobility and all sorts of things. Kind of has all things.
And we've had this conversation before, but I just kind of want to repeat it. That the on the topic of class identity, it seemed in the past, Stamsork has always kind of been the example of they lack class identity is what people always say. And I think they've done some work to kind of improve that, but even if they haven't, I'm not sure. They have a distinct play style. They really do. No other class feels the way a Stamsork feels.
Yeah.
I think they're conflating class power with class identity. Class identity, Stamsork's got a ton of flavor.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have as much, it doesn't bring as much to the table as, say, like a Warden or a Necro.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. But yeah, so that is right now, that's probably my favorite character. That's, if I'm on, that's the character I'm usually on right now. And then mainly the other stuff that I've been doing this week is just trying to get the guild hall set up, doing some housing, moving along with that project. I think
you got our student shrine set up now, right?
Student shrine is totally set up.
Here we go. I knew we'd work it in somehow.
I don't want to say it's completely done, but it's, I may tinker with it going forward, but for the most part, the exterior of the guild hall, I think, is pretty close to being done.
It looks so nice in there, man. It's really amazing.
Thanks. But yeah, just stamp sorking it up this week. That's pretty much all I've been doing.
Stamp sort, sweet. Caliban, what have you been up to, man?
Most people who play BGs know my mag sort, but I've been playing stamp sort lately myself, a bow build using the new, totally not broken Venomous Spite set.
Right.
Paired with a Zerblight Reaper and the new Asylum bow.
Okay. What's the Asylum bow do?
7k pen to bow abilities after hitting them with Acid Spray or Bombard.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very strong.
And with those proc sets, oh my gosh.
If you pair that with, say, Razor Caltrops, which gives you Fracture and snares people for you, you can drop that on a group, hit them with an Acid Spray, and then basically everybody detonates from Reaper.
Yeah.
Literally everybody detonates. I've
That's
done
incredible.
2.5 million in damage in Battleground with it. It's absolutely absurdly busted.
Holy cow.
I've been wanting to try a similar setup on a Stam Warden, but I think a Stam Sork can probably actually pull it off a little better.
The reason why to use a Stam Sork, personally for me, is Ball Lightning, because there's a lot of Mag Sorks, and also it cleanses snares from you, so it saves you a spot from like Shuffle or something.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Oh, and also, I feel like Hurricane would just help apply those stacks pretty nicely as well, right?
If you're in melee, I wouldn't recommend getting into melee in a medium bow build. But
yeah, sure. Cool, man.
I'm pretty sure DK's leaping me, take me to execute.
Yeah, these Titanborn DKs, man. I see so many Stam DKs that I'm like, oh, sweet. They have like 10% health left. I'm just going to take them out really quick. And then, nope, they leap me to death. Just one leap, one shot, because they're wearing Titanborn strength.
Been playing a little bit of Mag DK as well. Sunbark's old build, I did an iteration of it where I'm running Elfbane, Weapon Jewel, Rockdar, and then Buffer the Swift Body. But the secret for me to unlocking Mag DK, especially with the healing nurse, is Magma Shell as your ult instead of Leap. It basically acts like Corrosive, but you don't get the pen. But it does give your team a shield. So basically you pop Magma Shell and you can run right into a group, talons everybody down, and then burn them. It's a really fun playstyle if you like Mag DK. It's also different because most people go with leaping and all that.
Yeah. All three of the Dragon Knight's ultimate abilities are pretty fantastic. Class ultimate.
Very much so.
Dragon Knights have one of the coolest toolkits, I think, man. I really like the class a lot.
Back when we had pre-mades, organized 4v4s, shifting standard was a low-key game winner. You could go into a group, drop that, and defile everybody, and that would shut down the enemy healer.
Yeah.
It was such a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people who don't know about shifting standard, and they start panicking when they hear that shunk, shunk, shunk. Like it just keeps hitting the ground over and over again. It's like rattling. Like, what is happening? Oh my god!
Pair that with a little bombard, and people just vaporize.
They'll start reporting you for hacking. Cool. And is that it, Cal, or do you have anything else?
That's about it. I did a Vet Kinds Aegis, I say like a week ago. It's a very accessible trial if you're not good at veteran content. Honestly, the trash pulls are much harder than the bosses.
Okay.
That was about it.
Nice, dude. Very cool.
Very cool.
All right, man. Well, that is all we've been doing in the Elder Scrolls Online here lately. Why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about some Battlegrounds. I'll just kind of give the setup of what the BG Report is here. So once per patch, I like to do something called the BG Report, where I just check in on the state of Battlegrounds, just see how things are going, how different classes are performing, any new trends that are emerging, anything like that, the kind of observe, I just want to talk about it. I really love Battlegrounds, and so I always want to keep tabs on things and kind of give players maybe some ideas of things they may want to keep in mind when they're adjusting their builds and just jumping into Battlegrounds this patch. In the past, it's always been, the BG Report has always been its own separate, like, dedicated episode. But since we've started doing these weekly episodes now, I figure it makes more sense just to make it a segment in a regular episode. So that's what we're going to do. So this patch, I think right now the meta is still pretty topsy-turvy. Things have been disrupted quite a bit. We have new things like base critical resistance. We have mythic items. Arena weapons are more common than ever, so they're just generally out there a lot more than they used to be. And there's just a ton of new options that players have now that they didn't really have before. It's easier than ever to kind of dial in your character and fine-tune it to exactly the kind of playstyle that you want, and it still will be viable and do enough damage and have enough survivability to actually work. So things are a lot different this patch. And so I want to start by talking about some of the factors that players may want to keep in mind when they're making adjustments to their builds and strategies and stuff like that. And I have a few things written down here that I want to mention. But first, I just kind of want to hear from you two guys and just see what you've been up to as far as like changes you've been making to your builds or your approach to Battlegrounds this patch. Caliban, why don't we start with you, man? What changes have you been making here lately?
Mostly, the one thing to keep in mind is that health regen wasn't nerfed this patch. So they nerfed healing, like Caliban, but they didn't touch health regen. So on my Mag Sword, instead of Brightthroat's Boast as my main body set, I swapped to Amber Plasm, which just got buffed.
Oh, yeah, I love Amber Plasm.
And Sugar Skulls, about 1,800 health regen with like no real investment into it. It's such an amazing like heal over time just to like keep you topped up. You take a little chip damage, people aren't going to focus you because you heal right up.
Yeah.
And it's a big change for me. I've actually made that change basically across all my characters, is just slot a little more health regen just to cover up for, so you don't have to spam like a 5k burst heal if you take a light attack randomly, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because the moment you take damage in a BG, everybody's going to tunnel you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like, that's a smaller health bar. I'm going to fixate on that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So that's one change I've made. The thing about this patch, since healing is down, you don't need nearly as much damage to kill people. Like, probably my strongest class right now is my Mag DK. I don't have a single damage set on it, and I'm killing people in like 2 to 3 globals. It's not hard. So, I mean, you can still go like a max weapon damage, whatever build. Just don't expect to be able to like get into melee range and brawl for a while unless you're like really spec'd into it, personally.
Yeah,
like the old days where BGs used to be like a 15-minute slugfest with everybody in mosh pit. Those days are long.
Oh yeah, damage is just too high now. You just can't do that. It's more of like a CS:GO situation.
And just
very much so.
Yeah, and just a lot of burst too. Burst is so much. Higher now.
Take 10k from a single overload plus elemental weapon weave. Like, there's just no way to tank that, even if kept resists and all that.
Yeah, totally. Cool, Davis. What have you been making any changes or kind of having any new tactics or strategies?
Yeah, the main thing that I've been looking at is just, like you said, that base crit resist. So really, just kind of looking over all my builds with the full impin trait. I've been kind of researching with 5 impin and then changing usually my helm and shoulder piece to other traits that kind of fit with the build. I think this will probably still change going forward, but kind of what I've settled on is 5 impin and then 2 of some other trait, whatever kind of works better with the build, whether it's buffing stats or reducing the cost of block or well fitted, things like that. That's kind of the main focus that I've kind of gone through is looking through just the doors that are opened with having different traits.
Yeah, totally. That's a lot of what I've been doing too, is kind of taking advantage of that base crit resist, and just basically I'm just assuming that the amount of critical resistance that I've had up to this point is still enough, right? So I'm shooting for that same number and then investing whatever's left over that into something else. So, typically it's about 3 pieces M-Pen will get you to about the same amount of crit resist that you had with 7 M-Pen last patch. So I'm going 4 something else, 4 well-fitted on my stamina characters, 4 divines or something like that on my magicka characters. Has kind of been what I've been doing with traits.
Well-fitted is very nice in Battlegrounds.
Oh, yeah.
Can't second that enough.
Oh, yeah, totally. That wood elf with the snow treaders that I was talking about earlier, that's 4 well fitted, that cannot be snared, that runs really fast. That's really, really cool.
Bounces off the walls.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah. So factors that, and if you guys think of anything else along the way, feel free to shout them out. But factors that I think players may want to be keeping in mind in Battlegrounds this patch is basically what we were just saying. Damage is way, way up. We have the Malakath Band of Brutality is out there. Baylorg was buffed. Student's Favor, New Moon Acolyte, and Titanborn Strength. Those still exist. They're still out there. And just like Caliban was saying a minute ago, healing was nerfed quite a bit as well. So you're taking a bunch of damage, and you're having a more difficult time recovering from that damage.
One other thing that I've really noticed too is bows. This may be the most bows I've ever seen in PvP in this game right now.
Any theories why that might be?
I think bow is the most complete weapon line in the game right now. With the new Venomous Bite set, you have multiple dots, you have roots, you have a very good stun in Magnum Shot, which is the longest range stun in the game that does damage. And if you pair that with a Black Rose bow, you can do 16k damage with a single Magnum Shot.
Wow.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And if you throw out an acid spray on a group, your bolt will hit for 8k a tick.
Yeah.
It's just not survivable. It's a really strong weapon line right now.
It's that high damage, and that you're at range, so you're even, you're not even in the thick of it. Yeah. So it's defensive and offensive.
And a very nice side effect is that it's very, very strong against mag sorks, which are pretty prevalent in Battlegrounds. So,
yes.
There's a lot going for bow right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. And and the weapons are the master bow is more accessible now. That might be a factor as well.
Very much so.
People can do normal Dragonstar Arena, get a non-perfected master bow, and it's hard not to use that if you have it in your inventory.
Yeah.
Right. If I had any recommendation for people who want to play bow, go do a normal Asylum Sectorium run. The new Asylum bow is just incredibly powerful. 6,600 pen to bow attacks, running for 10 seconds. It's
crazy.
11% damage.
That sounds crazy. I'm using the master bow in my my Stam Crow right now, but that sounds like maybe I'll have to go get that instead.
Yeah, that one bow is the Student's Favor set.
Yeah, the Master's Bow is nice if you're running it as a back bar set, because it buffs everything. But if you're looking for a pure bow build, Asylum Bow front bar is just head and shoulders above everything right now.
Right on. Cool. Good advice. I think, I don't know, I feel like I always say this no matter what the meta is, but I really feel like this meta, the fact that damage is so high and burst happens so quickly, and the fact that players have more defensive options now, they have more ability to invest in other types of defense. I think that trying to build tanky and really bulk yourself up and just tank out the damage, to me, seems like an ineffective approach, especially if you still want to be able to do good damage yourself. I may be biased because I always utilize this sort of play style of utilizing movement and line of sight and that sort of thing to just straight up avoid damage, period, rather than trying to mitigate it. To me, that seems like the way to go right now. If you can just avoid all of the damage and then just burst people down in these windows of opportunity and then get back to line of sighting, seems to be an effective way to go. It's kind of a high actions per minute sort of play style, so maybe it isn't for everyone. But if you can pull it off, I think it's pretty good. Use these new mobility tools like the Snow Treaders or the Ring of the Wild Hunt. You can get really, really amazing mobility with very little investment. Just one item gives you all the mobility you need. So that's something to consider.
it's definitely interesting that, my experience in Battlegrounds and even PvP is that very rarely now am I running in, it used to be you'd always run into that player that you just say, oh, this guy's so tanky, like I'm just going to move on. That hasn't really happened as of late for me anyways. Very rarely am I running across somebody that I just think is so tanky that I move on. That definitely is a lot more rare occurrence for me.
Yeah, I think speed is very much king right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. And I wonder, Davius, if that's a big factor in why you're enjoying your Stab Sork so much. Because you always gravitate towards like slow and tanky kind of builds. That's sort of like seeming like your preferred play style. But you're really loving this Sork, who, I mean, it's a tanky build, but it's a Sork, so it's speedy no matter what.
It's definitely, I mean, it's definitely my highest actions per minute build by far. I mean, I'm always, anybody who's played a Stam Sork, you're always hitting something or getting buffs or, streaking or, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. I mean, it takes advantage of speed and mobility, and he's always moving around. Even when I've run with you, you've kind of joked that usually you're usually playing a really quick character. I'm usually playing the healer, and so we kind of joked like when you were on the healer and then I'm on the moving around character, you're like, hold on, just stay still so I can heal you for a second.
Yeah, we're like totally the tables have turned, and I like realized like, oh man, I've been making things hard on him this whole time, haven't I? I'm so sorry. Yeah. And you complain so much less than I do too. Another thing I wanted to kind of mention is off balance, and this has been a trend, not just this patch, but the past several patches. Is off balance is just more and more and more important. If you have off balance in your build, like if you can apply off balance to other players, this is a great source of sustain. It's your hard CC solution, and it can be a great solution for dealing a lot of damage to those players as well. And a lot of those things take up 0 bar slots or maybe just 1 bar slot, and you have all those tools within that one like mechanic.
We just have to admit, right, that Zos's favorite buff or debuff is off balance. Like that's just their favorite. They
seem
love
to
it.
really
They're
love
all
it.
about it.
So unintuitive to work with, like the notification for it, the timers. Kind of frustrating how prevalent it is, to be honest.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and so it's important to be aware of what you can do with it and how you can take advantage of it when you're applying off balance to other players. It's also super important to be aware of when you yourself are off balance and take the appropriate action, because more than ever before, if you're off balance right now, you are in grave danger, and you are like 2 global cooldowns away from death, more than likely.
Yeah.
So just be aware of off balance in general, this patch and probably every patch going forward. It's a very powerful tool if you can take advantage of it, and it can really mess you up if you're not aware of it as well.
Well, there's just more and more sets and abilities that are just gravitating towards it. It all started with the dizzy swing. They could never get dizzy the way they wanted it, and now it seems like they've got dizzy the way they want it, so they're adjusting everything else to fit their dizzy swing.
Yeah.
One thing I will say that I've noticed some people are not aware of, but if you set somebody off balance and they're blocking, you can still stun them through block with a medium weave.
Oh, interesting.
It goes right through block. So
cool. Good to know. All right. Any other sort of like general factors that you guys think players need to be keeping in mind this meta before we move on to this next sort of section here?
If you're a Magtoon and you're not healing your group in some way, you're a massive liability compared to a Stamtoon.
Yeah.
Like, backbar Resto with Radiating Regen should just like come stamped on every single Magtoon. It's such a game changer for just how much utility and like being able to keep your teammates up and topped up a little bit in Battlegrounds goes a long way to winning them, if you're interested in winning them.
Yeah, and it's a surprisingly strong heal over time as well.
The tooltip is identical to the old Rapid Regen, so it's a really strong heal.
Yeah.
Almost 2k per second, so...
Yeah, that's literally on every single one of my Magicka builds has a Resto staff with that ability on the back bar.
The number of Mag Sorks I've seen who sit in the back of a group, spamming Fury, do no healing and then get run over and then complain about why they get run over is just unbelievable. Like,
I've talked about this before on a Magsork. Radiating Regen with the power surge, that morph of surge is excellent. I think it's a really, really excellent combo because you got Radiating Regen ticking away on all of your allies. So you're getting mad crits off of that stuff, and so your power surge is proccing on cooldown, and that's a pretty strong heal as well. So like those two abilities alone, I mean, you're going to have surge active at all times no matter what. Those two abilities alone are giving your team a really nice layer of support. And just passively, you're just fighting while those abilities are doing their thing.
Yep, and they've got a long cooldown, so it's not like you're wasting a lot of globals on it. Very much so.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's talk a little bit about, and you just kind of sort of led us into this, Caliban, stamina versus magicka and like medium and light armor builds versus heavy armor builds. What do we think? Do we think stamina seems to be dominating or magicka seems to be dominating? It seems like up to now, it seems like stamina has been pretty dominant. And I'm wondering if you guys are seeing if that's still the case or not or what. Why don't we start with Caliban?
I think mostly, like, you're right on that one. Basically, stam is head and shoulders above mag, unless you're talking about Magsork, specifically for Battlegrounds.
Right.
Topic. In a lot of the cases, Magsork's strength in Battlegrounds comes down to kill ceiling rather than actual killing power. But that's a pretty fair assessment. I think the balance has come down a little bit just because since healing is less, Vigor isn't quite as strong a mitigation tool this patch. Like, on my Mag DK, I can burn down somebody in Vigor with Rally with my dots. Like, so I think the balance has come down a little more in favor of Mag because Templar has dots, Mag DK has dots, Mag Necro sucks. But every other class has pretty good dots, and it's a lot more useful this patch. So balance is better. Heavy armor builds for stamina, however, are strong because they don't have much in the way of weapon crit. So they can all slot Malekith's Band and get a massive buff to their damage. Like, for example, I got hit by Arcanax, not in Corrosive, for an 11k heavy attack the other day.
Wow. I can tell that Malekith Band is out there, along with Stoon's Favor, man. Someone lands 2 dizzy swings on me, that is often lights out right there if I'm not blocking.
Even if you are.
Even if I am a lot of the time, yeah. Cool. Davius, any thoughts on stamina versus magicka, medium light versus heavy armor, any of that kind of stuff?
Well, I think one thing that's just kind of stood out to me is with the stamina versus magicka debate is that, stamina really is great. You can make stamina great really on any class. At really high-end PvP, you can really work stamina to be great on any class, where I feel like really high-end PvP with magicka, there's really specific classes. Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest thing with it is that, if you've got the right class with magicka, I think it can then I think it's great balance there. But there's just certain classes that if you're magicka, you're just going to struggle. It's just not as it's not as class balanced. I don't think magicka is as class balanced, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is stamina. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, a big part of that, in my personal opinion at least, is that a lot of magicka players don't heal the group. So 3 magicka players supporting each other with radiating and cross healing will beat the crap out of a stam player.
Yeah.
But a lot of mag players don't. They're completely selfish. They play like a stam tune, but they don't have the tankiness or damage to play that way. So really, the balance is that if mag is supporting each other, they're stronger than stam, but they don't. And that's a problem with maybe the quality of player or just experience level or something.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
A year ago in BGs, every mag player had 1 million damage, 200 to 300k healing. That's a unicorn these days.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. Like, I don't know if it's because we've lost a lot of population or something, but the amount of players who really know how to play the game at a high level just don't seem to be there sometimes.
I think that's a point that often does not get brought up in this stamina versus magicka conversation, especially with people complaining that, stamina has so many advantages and they're so dominant and all this stuff. But the the support capabilities, and you put 3 stamina players up against 3 magicka players, the magicka team should win, even though the stamina players per player probably has more damage, more personal survivability.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it almost seems like I think you made a great point, Caliban. It almost seems like, I don't know if it's because they have talked about the nerf and healing in PvP or what, but it almost seems like players are the support magicka character. I don't know if players are scared to go that route because they've seen the nerfs or what, but magicka support in Battlegrounds right now definitely seems a lot more rare than it used to be.
The number of Maxworks I see that don't run Bird, don't run Resto Staff, and just because they're the most common class, and I'm kind of a snob when it comes to Maxworks because I made one for so long. But like, you cannot sit there and complain about Stam Necro and other classes when you don't do the basic job that a Magtoon should be doing. Like, Sauce has basically told us that Mag is supposed to be more of a support role.
Yeah.
So if you don't play it that way, you can't expect to beat somebody with a 20k vigor who can hit an 8k dizzy on you. Like, be realistic. There's other ways to win.
Well, I wonder if part of that too is, because I can say this personally that it's hit me, is that, my main is a PvP support magicka build, but I don't play on that character as much anymore because without grouping and battlegrounds, it's a lot more difficult to go into solo battleground queues as a support character. I mean, stamina, it kind of like what we've been talking about, is that your most stamina builds are kind of made to be on their own. They've got high damage, they can take care of themselves. Magicka is more this team support type thing. But when you take grouping away, you're putting out a lot of risk on the table, is hoping that this team that you're going to randomly be in is going to work with you to allow that support.
Yeah, I mean, that the grouping thing, I think, is probably the key thing why we're not seeing a lot of these sort of support focused or kind of split focused players out there, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of players are incentivized by seeing those nice numbers at the end of the match, like, holy crap, I got 1 million heals and 1 million damage, I'm the best. And it's so hard to accomplish that anymore because you can't count on your team actually like staying close enough for you to heal them to get those numbers.
My favorite anecdote for that: who wants to play a support player when you get into a battleground, you got 3 Nightblades hiding in cloak the entire time?
Oh,
yeah,
man.
exactly.
Good
yeah,
night,
totally.
Yeah. And I think along with this new patch, with what we've talked about with bow builds and things like that, I've seen more Nightblades than ever in Battlegrounds, it seems like.
Nightblades are a lot stronger just because the less healing, the more viable ganking is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, why don't we get into this discussion about classes? That's a perfect segue because the first one I was going to start with is Nightblade, and I feel like they have an interesting story to tell because they're kind of sort of a stepchild in Battlegrounds, wouldn't you say? Like, you load into a match, you look at who's on your team. Man, I got a Nightblade on my team. I hope they're good. That's always the thought. So Caliban, you think they're in a better spot now?
No, but I think really good players can get a lot more out of them. The problem with Nightblade for the longest time is that it gravitates towards newer players. You come from Skyrim or something like that, you want to play a stealth class. Stealth is always popular, but players don't play it to level of mastery. There's not 100 Jinx players or, in particular, Titan Brand. I just gotta give him a shout out because what he does on a Nightblade is so impressive in IMR.
Dude is good.
He's terrifying to see in a battleground if he's not on your team.
Yeah, I mean, he tears my Sork into small, tiny little pieces and then, teabags them. But, the reality is that I don't think it's so much Nightblades are bad. It's that a lot of players are gravitating to the stealth playstyle that are new, and then they gravitate towards, bow, snipe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of an experience and quality of player than the class toolkit, because the class toolkit isn't that bad, I don't think. It's bad for Battlegrounds because the maps are tight, there's a lot of AoE. Yeah. But the class is really strong in Cyrodiil, and I think if more experienced players played the class, it had more potential. Particularly Magblade. Back when we did pre-mades, Ironworks used to be our healer on a Magblade, and he was one of the strongest healers consistently.
I've seen some insane Magblade healers.
Yeah.
Right. And I've seen some really good Magblade tanks. Like, I'm running VCR +3, or at least I was, and our main tank was a Nightblade. So like it's got the tools to be more effective. I just think people gravitate too much towards invisibility and don't really like branch out to their build ideas.
Yeah, I think a lot of Nightblades, Stand Blades especially, are the recipients of negativity a lot of the time, both from enemies and allies, right? Like they're just like, it seems like people are just not nice to Nightblades because you kill an enemy, say you successfully gank someone. Well, nobody likes getting ganked. You're going to get a hate tell probably. And then your teammates probably don't appreciate you hanging out in stealth the whole time and forcing them to fight outnumbered the whole time. So they're going to probably have some not so nice things to say as well. And so I think Nightblades oftentimes will get discouraged, and that's why I think as your MMR climbs up, you start seeing fewer and fewer Nightblades. Well, that's one of the reasons, at least. I also think it's just hard for them to be successful. Maybe it's easier now in this meta, but with no champion points to actually be a successful ganker at high MMR with players who are ready for it and know how to respond to it and counter it. It's like, okay, if you're not successfully ganking people, then you may as well be a brawler, then you may as well be a DK,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, I think of all the classes, Nightblade, the stealth is such a overpowering theme to Nightblade. Whether people are using it right or whether people are overusing it. Of all the classes in the game, the stealth with Nightblade, it's just so overpowering. And then how much it ties into their kit. And I think Caliban made a great point. Is it most players are gravitating this, and then it's such a powerful theme to the build or crutch to the build, however you want to say it. And so many people are depending on it. And stealth, unless you're using it right, like Caliban said, with a high-end player, it really is such a debuff to team playing in a battleground.
Yeah, because say like you main a Stamplar and you're deciding, I want to check out PvP. Let's go see what that's all about. You learn right away the importance of keeping your armor buff up, keeping all of your buffs up, and the importance of proper positioning and all these different, like, man, you're going to learn those lessons real quick. But man, a Nightblade, you might be playing this game for 3 years and never learn those lessons, because you can crutch on stealth so much.
Stealth is so polarizing because it goes from either like the most broken one-on-one skill in the game to something that's completely useless against a really good player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's huge too that we're talking about stealth and how big it is, and you like what you're saying, Kit. Their players are in battlegrounds and they're not getting deaths because of stealth, and so they'll go a long ways where they'll get some kills. They have low deaths, and so they think that they're doing really good. They think that, all right, this is a successful battleground, when their team is losing because they're not doing enough damage or they're not playing helpful enough to the team. But they leave that battleground saying, that went great. I only had 2 deaths because I kept myself alive, and I got a couple kills, and it was just my team. They're saying my team is bad, but really what they're doing is that they're hurting their team because they're not in fights.
To borrow an example from another game in Halo, say the time to kill is 1 second. If you have 3 targets, that time to kill is cut by 1/4. But if all 4 players are sharing damage, you're buffing how much relative damage you can take by 1/4.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that Nightblades don't take damage for their team is a pretty significant handicap, especially in high MMR.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important in group PvP to remember the importance of rotating, and basically you need to take turns taking some of those hits, more or less.
Yep. Yeah. Very much so.
All right, I think we've talked about Nightblade quite enough. Anything else to say about Nightblade before we move on? So why don't we talk about Caliban's main, the Sorcerer. So always super duper popular in Battlegrounds. I can't imagine there ever being a patch that Sorcerer isn't super successful and super popular in Battlegrounds. Are sorcerers having to take different things into account or changing up their strategy, or is it still just spam Mage's Wrath and Streak all the time, or what's up there?
I think, honestly, the loss of like some of the higher level players, I don't know, when was the last time you saw Van Style or Dell or Trance or any other really good stand players in BGs has hurt BG diversity, because they knew how to fight mag source. They knew how to pressure them. They knew how to like prevent getting their kills stolen and various other things. Right now, we have a lot of mediocre players, even in high MMR games, who are very susceptible to kill stealing and being third party by Sorks.
Yeah.
So I personally playing the class, like, you got to be able to adjust to how to fight Sorks. Like, they aren't that strong one-on-one. So find ways to get them one-on-one, and you can kill them pretty easily. Like, denying the pet heals. Like, you kill that matriarch, and the Sork's got to waste a global and a half resummoning it. Go stun them. They don't have a heal for 3-4 seconds. Yeah, it's just they're polarizing just because they get better the worse the opposition is. So when it comes to farming low MMR players, they're unquestioned kings.
Right.
They'll do it all day.
Yeah, their effectiveness drops quite a bit at those high rank matches, and I find that like my sort of roly-poly kind of play style that I like quite a bit is pretty effective against Sorks because I just dodge most of their attacks.
Yep.
So that's a pretty good way to go about it. And we'll talk about wardens here in a second, but just the class warden is a pretty darn good counter to sorcerer as well.
Yep. Shimmering is nobody ever hated Shimmering Shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Davis, I mean, you've talked about your stab sort quite a bit already, but you've been playing a stab sort. I don't know. I feel like, I guess maybe most of these class discussions, we're mostly talking about the Magicka variant, right? Because stam across the board is in a very similar spot, although certain classes are better than others still. But, so I don't know. Did you have anything more you wanted to say about stam sort since we're talking about sorcerer right now?
I mean, just how much I'm loving it. But I think the biggest thing with Stam Sork that I think made it appealing to me is kind of like you said. I usually, my main is a magic character, but most of my characters are stamina characters, and the way that I usually play is kind of a tanky, not really on speed, and so the Stam Sork really, to me, among most other classes, it's a great class to get if you're not used to playing a mobile quick, a lot of actions per minute. It was a great segue for me as a character to kind of get to that more style. Is that character, my Stam Sork is kind of tanky. It does wear heavy armor, but I might even change that going forward just because, when you have an ability like Streak on a stamina character, it just allows you to be so much more mobile. And it really kind of, for me anyways, it highlighted the mobility playstyle and the advantages and what that can do for you with a build.
And I think that classic just stam sork, hit and run, spin to win sort of playstyle, it's right at home in Battlegrounds, I think.
Yes.
I always have very good success with my stam sork in Battlegrounds.
The unblockable streak stun is kind of nice. It's not kind of nice too.
Yeah, totally.
And for people who complain about mag sorts, that's the one point I emphatically agree with. Streak being an unblockable, undodgeable stun is just hilariously overtuned.
Yes. As somebody who's been using it and loving it, I would not be sad to see it be nerfed. It's too powerful right now.
How many times do I see the little meteor circle at my feet? And I know it's a sorcerer that I'm fighting, and so I don't even try to block because I know it's coming, Yeah,
I mean, the class was a lot more fairly balanced back before it got a really big heal along with an unblockable stun. Flame Reach was used a lot, but I don't think it was anywhere near as unbalanced as this current streak is.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Flame Reach, man, I mean, that was... How much more telegraph can you get? It's a slow-moving projectile. It's a giant, tractor wheel-sized thing, flying through the air.
And it's blockable and dodgeable.
Yeah.
You could have adjusted the cost there and maybe double the cost if you really don't want it to be spammable or something, but...
Yeah.
One of the more boneheaded decisions I think Zoss has made, balance-wise.
Yeah, especially for it to be, a 15-meter range or something? It's really... Yeah.
It's not usable.
All right, so I think that's enough about Sorcerer. Let's move on and talk about the Warden. So as I was just saying, I think the class Warden is basically just a hard counter to Sorcerers. And as long as Sorcerers are popular in Battlegrounds, Wardens are going to continue to be an excellent choice. Caliban alluded to Shimmering Shield earlier. It basically just makes you immune to crystal frags. You also have the Betty Netch that automatically cleanses you every 5 seconds. That basically makes you immune to the curse or Mage's Wrath. I can't count the number of times I've been on my Warden 1v1ing a Sork, and they just give up and streak away because they realize they're not going to get the kill. And it's not even hard. You're not even having to expend that many resources to do it. And Wardens also just make every team they're on better, just by existing and being there, especially a Mag Warden. Your team is just better. So can't go wrong with the Warden, and I'd say any patch ever. And this patch especially, I think they're in a very, very, very good spot. Just with there's some cool armor sets out there that synergize really, really nicely with their class, and they just have an absolute complete toolkit. Any way you want to build them, anything that you want to have in your toolkit is available to you, and you can work it in there somehow.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You hit the nail on the head there, is that to me, Warden is just the most flexible class in the game. You want to make a healer, fantastic. Magic a healer, fantastic. You even made a stamina healer that was very effective. You want to go high damage, you can go that route too. You want to do some sort of hybrid, Magica, stamina, healer, damage. With a Warden, can really do it all. It's such a flexible class.
Yeah, there's so many viable ways to build them out and set them up. I really love Warden quite a bit.
I know Time Dazzler does a little bit of off healing on his Stamina Warden. It's a very, very flexible class. One thing to point out, if you haven't done it on a Magic Warden, but the Ice Furnace set is low-key like a really strong proc set for them right now.
What's the proc do on that again?
Every time you do ice damage, you do fire damage, and it's like 1,500 per second. So you can drop gripping shards on people and burn them down pretty quickly.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to check that out. I'm using my Warden's like a support build, and it's Spell Power Cure and Heaty's Hearth are the main sets there, and I like it a lot. It's really cool. Anything else to say about Warden? Yeah, they're awesome. MVPs of every battleground, I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
can't go wrong with a Warden.
They're a great class.
Templar, I think, is always strong too, although the main thing that gave them their edge was nerfed this patch, right, which is healing. I think they're still super strong, but I'm not seeing nearly as many of them. I think the flavor of the month right now is Stamina Necromancers, and that's what I'm really seeing a whole lot of. So whereas we were seeing a ton of Templars a couple of patches ago, I feel like whoever was playing Templars then are playing Stamcrows now. I still feel like they're pretty strong, though, especially like Stuin's Favor. You get a toppling charge and, you get some jabs in your face and it's going to be lights out pretty quick right there. Have you guys noticed anything about Templars?
I agree with what you're saying. I'm not seeing as many. I mean, I think Templar will always have the best spammable in the game. Jabs is just unbelievable, but I am seeing a lot less of them, and it probably is due to the fact that, their biggest part was that they had such great heals, team and self heals, and with the healing kind of going down, I have seen a lot less of them, and they don't seem to be as prevalent as they were.
I feel like cleansing is less important than it has been in the past as well.
Not at all. I think there's a lot less Magplars. I think Stamplars are just really, really good right now. Like, if you take a player like Odin, PK, he's a streamer. Like, his Stamplar is just really good. It gives group support, like Purifies. Because that new Venomous Bite set is cleansable.
Oh, okay.
And it's on every battleground. So
it's everywhere.
Really want So yeah, Magplar really is in a good spot right now. I know Hottie doesn't want to play his main Magplar anymore because his heals feel weak. But Stamplar is in a really good spot.
Yeah, my Stamplar feels really good right now for sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like no one's ever mad to see a Templar in the group. Certainly not. For sure that they're going to be able to put out some decent damage, and you're definitely going to be getting at least some healing from them. Like, they can't not heal almost.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about Dragon Knights. So I know that Stamina Dragon Knights are incredibly tough right now. Man, they slap on that Band of Brutality and just start swinging their greatsword around, and it's just like a wrecking ball, man. There's like not much you can do against it. I know, Caliban, you've been playing some MagDK here lately, right?
MagDK is my main alt. It has been for a while.
Oh, okay, all right.
Basically my adjustments this patch has been to build a little more tanky. I'm running Elfbane and Buff of the Swift and Groftar. But instead of Leap, I've been using Magma Shell. So Magma Shell limits your incoming damage to 3% of your health. So it's only 200 ult. You pop that, and with Elfbane, it actually lasts 18 seconds.
Wow.
You basically have an 18-second window where you can do whatever you want.
Oh, I didn't realize Elfbane applied to that ultimate.
Because
Wow.
it's a fire damage over time effect.
Okay.
So literally, you get 18 seconds of near immunity to damage.
Wow.
You can run into groups, talons them with burning talons, run engulfing, and you're applying massive pressure, like really incredible pressure, and it's in a good spot. Like, you are good with heal whip, you can keep yourself up through pretty much anything while that effect is up.
Do you gain ultimate while you're in that magma form?
Yep. So if you kill 2 or 3 people with it up, you basically can perma Magma Shell.
Wow. That's a really cool combo.
Yeah. My comments on Magicka Dragonite, I think, are similar to most patches. They don't seem super popular. Not saying they're not good. I think they're a very powerful, super awesome class, but they just don't seem like a popular choice. And I think it's basically for the same reason that Sorcerer is such a popular choice, right? Like Mag DKs just don't get a ton of killing blows. There's a lot of matches where you might get like 5 kills, 0 deaths, but like 24 assists, and so people just, they don't like seeing that number as much as they like seeing those killing blow numbers. I love Mag DK, but I just don't see a lot of them out there.
And the other problem with Mag DK is speed. Like, unless you're using Race Against Time constantly, they are a slow class, and speed is king in Battlegrounds.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always look at Dragonite as it's definitely not the best class, but it is one of the most fun classes. Their toolkit is just so much fun to use.
It's you say they're not the best class. Yeah, you say they're not the best class, and like I would say that sometimes too. And then I match up against like a good Mag DK, yeah. And it's the most oppressive experience. Like people that just know that class and know how to work them. Man, it's like
it's demoralizing. They just grind you down into the ground. You're
just like trying to claw your way up a muddy hill, and you're never getting there.
And as much as it matters, it's literally the coolest class in game. You can't beat breathing fire or lava whip. Come on.
Yeah, all of their abilities are so cool. Their toolkit is just so much
absolutely fun. The coolest class for sure. All right, and the last one we have here is the Necromancer. I saved this one for last on purpose because I feel like there's a little bit to dig into here.
Yep.
Stamina Necromancers, right?
Ugh.
Am I right? They're everywhere. They are incredibly powerful. They've been fixed, right? A patch or 2 ago, they basically have been fixed, and they work really well now. And now they're basically crazy OP, and everyone is playing them. And if you're not a Stamina Necromancer, you might have a difficult time fighting all the Stamina Necromancers that are out there.
It would be remiss not to mention their brokenness in one particular aspect. Ghost, the self buff that gives 10% mitigation, that skill actually acts like a regular pet on a Sork or a Warden. It actually prevents abilities from being fired because it acts like it prevents targeting on the Stam Necro. So it's an incredibly frustrating bug. I don't know if it's been spoken about much.
I've noticed that, but I haven't seen many people talk about it. Also, I mean, the fact that they have Major Defile that they can just put on you anytime they want. It's attached to this big AoE blast that takes half your health bar away. I think it's always seemed on paper to be like, that seems pretty strong, but good thing Blast Bones barely works, so no one really complained about it too much. But now, man, they cast Blast Bones on you, you're getting hit with that Blast Bones. Like, you're not, like, it's hard to avoid.
Yeah. If I'm in a PvP area and I don't see a Blast Bones running around, then I think something's wrong with the game.
Yeah.
It's about where it's at right now.
And, the people who cast that on cooldown, man, that's Major Defile up at all times. I mean, even as a Templar, you can only cleanse so many times, before you're out of Magicka. It's just like, man, I've been in fights that's like, man, I don't know what to do. I do not know what to do against this player.
It's not just Major Defile, by the way. The disease status effect actually has a chance to proc Minor Defile.
Yep, that as well.
Well, and it's huge too to mention that you talk about, full uptime or casting it on cooldown. The passive that cuts the cost for it makes that very easy to do.
Oh yeah, it costs nothing. It costs nothing at all. If you're looking for the meta, this patch, it is Stabbing a Necromancer, probably a New Moon Acolyte, Student's Favor, and Baylorg, or the Malakath Band of Brutality.
Very much so, yeah. Or even Fury Body, if you want to go heavy.
Yeah. And then just put Dizzy Swing on all 5 slots, and you're good. Good to go.
Well, throw Blast Bones on one of them, and then you're set.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They're incredibly strong. What's weird, though, is how incredibly strong they are and how incredibly not so strong Magicka Necros seem to be outside of like a support role.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if weird is the right word. It's just interesting to point out. I have some ideas about why I think that is, but I figure I would let you guys share some thoughts first.
Well, what do you combo with Blast Bones on a Magic Necro? There's no answer. There's nothing you can combo it with. So there's no curse. There's no fury. There's no incap. There's no bow ult. There's nothing. So there's no really good dots because the skeletal mage costs an arm and a leg and it doesn't really do shit. Sorry, pardon that.
That's okay. But yeah, it's hard to control who your skeletal mage is targeting.
Right, yeah. It attacks the nearest person, but it's once every 2 seconds, and it's not a big dot, so good for racking up pointless counting stats if you want.
I feel like the thing that I notice against Magcrows myself, like when I'm playing up against a Magcrow, is some of them can be incredibly strong and put out a ton of damage, but it's like the moment I realize oh, this is a losing fight, it's no problem to just nope right out of there, and it's so easy to disengage, and they really have zero options to keep you, to stay on top of you and make you keep fighting them. I think to me that's the biggest thing that I've noticed is even the ones that can build really good and have a lot of damage and are have decent success, just forcing people to fight them is what the challenge becomes then.
Right. The only offensive stun available to Mag Necro is Flame Clench. 15-meter range. It also comes with a drawback of cutting all your damage to all your main damage abilities by 8%, because you want a lightning staff on a Necro.
Right.
And lightning doesn't stun.
Yeah, not anymore. Now, that being said, if you're looking for a support-focused build, I feel like Magicka Necro is one of the very best choices you can choose. They are incredible. I have a Magcrow healer right now that is one of my very favorite characters. It's probably one that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with in the coming weeks. So if that's what you're all about is team support and that sort of thing, then top tier, I say.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get kills and do that sort of thing, maybe the worst choice you could.
Yeah, I don't think any circle group is complete without a Mag Necro support build, even if it's just for the Atronek, so you can bomb groups.
Yeah, or just the fear totem alone, I feel like is worth bringing up a log.
That fear totem is nasty.
Yeah,
the root too, because it applies minor maim in a pretty big area. So
yeah, it's really nice. A good class. And I think the thing to keep in mind through this battleground discussion is I'm not trying to say the class is good or bad. It's specifically within the context of battlegrounds. They're a super strong class at the things that they're good at. They're the best. But you just don't see a lot of Magcrows out there. And when I do see them, they're usually a support build. But Stamcrow, the best of the best. Absolutely.
Watch out.
Yeah.
That's all the classes. So vampires, of course, were massively reworked. And I do see a lot of them out there, but I'm not sure I'm getting a good read on their overall effectiveness. I don't know if I'm getting killed by vampires necessarily a lot. I do see them out there, but nothing's really standing out to me. Have you guys noticed anything about vampires?
As someone who, for the past couple of episodes, I've talked about this vampire build I've had and been really excited about it. Now that I've got my hands on it, and I'm still testing and I'm still working with it, but the more I work with it, I become a little bit less and less excited about it, which I think you kind of called, but I was a little surprised by. Their kit is just so, so focused on using vampire abilities, and then, if you use any other abilities, then they're going to be increased, but the decrease on the vampire abilities, and it's great, but they don't. It's very difficult to find a way to deal damage with them. So I've kind of tested my build, and it's extremely tanky. I've even taken it in some PvP areas, and it lives and it can survive. It's very hard to kill. But I just feel like I'm just hitting like a wet noodle. Like I'm just not putting out any damage.
Yeah, the change to Blood Frenzy basically gutted the vampire on arrival. The 20% ramping cost to that per second is just completely untenable.
Yeah.
Because it prevents outside healing. I've tried to make it work on somebody who's not even attacking me. I can't sustain the heal even on a strong healing class for more than 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, I'll even go try to kill NPCs with that, and you have to even be careful just killing regular NPC mobs because it starts hitting you so hard.
For reference, I stacked Radiating Regen, I had Ritual on the ground, and I was spamming the Vamp Drain heal, which is supposed to heal 23% of your missing health per second, and I died in 6 seconds with it active. So, and that was in CP, not PvP, so it wasn't cut by Battle Spirit.
Yeah, I feel like I still see a fair amount of Mist Form, and I see the Vampire Lord ultimate basically used as a defensive ultimate, right, just to heal up. Right. But otherwise, I'm not seeing a lot of vampire gameplay. Not all that much.
There's a couple reasons for that. Mist Form is inferior to Race Against Time, and why would you bother with Vamp Form at all when you can run more health regen, which didn't get nerfed, which is more valuable than anything you get from Vampire?
Yeah, I think that's a huge point, is what you had, all the points you've made, Caliban, about health regen, and that vampires just eliminate that. And with the nerf to healing is just kind of a double negative for them right now.
Right, way too much.
Yeah, Battlegrounds in general just seems like way too volatile an environment for a vampire, all the AoE that you're typically dealing with, and just a lot of high concentration of players in a given area. And my idea of what a vampire is now is this sort of paper cannon sort of thing. You need to get in, basically gank someone, and then disappear like a Nightblade. And in Battlegrounds, just like we were talking about with Nightblades, that sort of playstyle is just difficult to pull off.
Well, and the problem with vampires is kind of what I was saying, is that that's kind of the playstyle they push for. But maybe it's just me, but it's really difficult to try to deal high damage with them. Even if you kick on all their damage abilities, you're killing yourself as quickly as you're killing somebody else.
The one place where I say I think Vampire is really good and has a lot of potential is with Magblade, because one of the Vampire passives is 300 spell damage after you get out of Cloak.
Yeah.
Or Stealth. So you can run that on stage 1 on a Vamp Blade and basically get a free 300 spell damage, which is pretty massive buff.
Yeah.
Basically no downside. I think it's the one class where Vampire really, really shines.
Yeah, that could really up your gank potential there for sure.
Or even just as a brawler, because remember, Swallow Soul scales off how much damage you do. So with more damage, you heal for more.
Yeah, certainly.
The other thing I'll say about Vampire 2 is that I wish that Scion was a little more unique from Bone Goliath. I feel like that they're kind of very similar. They kind of, like you said, Ket. You really kind of use it as a defensive ultimate. They have one just like the Bone Goliath where you can do an AoE damage while it's up, and then the other one just kind of makes you more tanky.
Yeah, it was looking like for a while there, I was thinking oh, okay, it's kind of like a werewolf. It looks like the whole idea here is to try to stay in that vampire lord form, right, all the time. But I'm not really seeing that happen.
They made a mistake with that, because there's only one ult per class. Bat Swarm used to be a really niche skill, but it was really good for people who built it. You could put that on a Templar, and it gave you a lot of healing and the ability to stick in the fights. A copy of Goliath form does not.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing for me, is I wish it would be a little bit more different from the Goliath form. I think you can get it to be a little bit lower cost, but it's kind of not quite as good as a Goliath form.
All the negatives that come with Vampire, I feel like would be solved if it was tuned in a way where the Vampire Lord morph where you get rid of all the negative aspects of vampirism, right? It's like stage 5 vampire. Like if you can make a build where you can just like live in that form indefinitely, kind of like how a werewolf works, I feel like we would see a lot of that.
Right, but disabling ult gen while in that big mistake.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, that was so on my vampire originally was going to go for the stage 5 scion, but I went away from that because while it's great to have your health regen back, it's only when you're in that ultimate form. As soon as you lose it, you go back, and when you're in that form, you don't really need the health regen because your health is buffed up real bunch. You heal when you do damage, and so the health regen in that stage didn't really help a whole lot because my health's usually fine when I'm in that stage. It's out of that stage that you lose all the health regen again. It just really wasn't that beneficial.
Yeah. So
I mean, really that morph, really all it's doing is giving your health regen back, and you're not taking as much flame damage.
Right. I think they made a mistake because, it's a Skyrim chapter, so they had to sell the Vampire Lord form with it, for nostalgia and all that.
Yeah.
I think they made some artistic choices that just don't fit with the gameplay of the game at all.
Yeah, certainly. It's, I don't know, maybe as time goes on, people will learn new tricks and new ways to incorporate it. It's still pretty early for this new vampire situation, so, we don't really know. So far, it doesn't seem to offer a lot of great tools at least for like small group PvP, like arena PvP like this.
Yeah.
Right. But, they just recently rebuffed Werewolves, so it's possible they'll revisit the skill line.
Yeah, certainly. And that's a perfect segue. So let's talk about Werewolves because they were substantially buffed this patch, and they actually are in really, really good shape. And I was expecting to see a lot more werewolves in Battlegrounds, and I've been playing a lot of Battlegrounds, and I'm surprised at how I'm really not seeing a change in the werewolf population. I don't know if you guys' experience has been the same or different, but in the past, I almost never would see werewolves, and I think probably for good reason. They have a difficult time. They weren't in such a great spot. Now seems like the time to get your werewolves, guys. Jump in there, and I'm just not seeing them.
I feel like it's just day by day. It's only going to keep growing. We went against some werewolves last night in Imperial City, and they were formidable foes.
They were.
They have a great setup right now. I agree with you. I think it's just something that the focus is on vampires, and I think just over time, the more people that start kind of looking into the new werewolf changes, I think it's only going to grow.
Agree. Like people doing antiquities, people doing a whole bunch of new stuff. They haven't looked at a whole skill line.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, they're just maybe not as aware of what's happening with Vampire, or just busy with other stuff.
I mean, I'm guilty of that. I'm actually going to go re-look at my Stam Sword Werewolf right when we're done with this because I remember I still have it on there.
Yeah, nice.
My next character that I'm leveling up is going to be my werewolf. I'm pretty excited to do it, but like we said, there's just so much to do right now that I just haven't gotten around to doing it just yet.
But my guess is that werewolves are in maybe the best spot they've ever been in terms of Battlegrounds. So, if people listening are wondering if it's a good time to take their werewolves in there, I think so, absolutely. I think this is the time to dust off your werewolf, get those claws out, and see what you can do. Absolutely. Last thing I have to say about Battlegrounds is I just want to keep beating the dead horse of grouping. We've already talked about this, I think, almost every single episode since the change was made. But that's the biggest factor in Battlegrounds right now is that you can't group up with friends anymore. And I think as much things have changed, this is the thing that has changed the landscape the most. This is the thing that is affecting the decisions that people are making in their builds and in their tactics and their approach more than anything. Is just the fact that you can't group up with a friend. You can't, like Davius and I would always put two builds together that complement each other and, go see what we can do. But now I know I can't do that. So I'm going to make different decisions in my build to make sure I'm covered on all the bases that I need because I don't know what my teammates are going to be. I have no idea. So I got to make sure I'm ready for anything.
Yeah. My two biggest points with this is one, I feel like it's causing Battlegrounds players, to be more selfish than ever, because you don't know what you're getting with, and so it really causes, and that's just kind of the natural way to go. I mean, it's including myself. I'm making my builds more selfish than ever, And it's when you get into these teams, it's kind of in Battlegrounds, teams are less cooperative than ever, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah.
And then the number 2 point is that this is also this has caused me. I've probably in this era of Battlegrounds, it's probably the least amount of Battlegrounds I've ever done.
Oh, certainly. And I wonder what that is looking like across the board. If it's just a lot less players in general.
No. I mean, it very much has improved. Probably casual players playing it because they perceive the fact that they got crushed in Battlegrounds as pre-mades. But the reality is, the way the MMR inflated pre-made group queues, you never faced them when you were low level, low MMR. Like, they weren't really a problem in any serious way.
Yeah.
People misattributed the fact that a really good player in good gear can farm for bad or newish players endlessly in a battleground.
Yeah. It happened all the time, and even before the change and after the change, I feel like I find myself on both sides of that equation all the time. I'm on a team that's super dominant and just squashes everyone, or I'm on a team that is on the receiving end of that. It happens all the time before this change was made and after the change was made. I'm not seeing any difference in that.
Yeah. Well, I think that, just to a point that you used to always make, I think there's this, and to feed onto Caliban's point, back when there was grouping, we used to do 4-man groups, 2-man groups.
Yeah.
And the MMR spike for when you're in those groups, it bumps you up so much. We would say all the time, you know what, I'm just going to solo queue because I want to take a break from those matches.
It is such an obvious difference. We had a regular 4-man squad that we would roll with all the time. And you could see such a difference. Like, I'd be on by myself, playing Battlegrounds by myself, and then everyone would jump on, hey, everyone, let's group up, let's go do some pre-mades. And man, immediately, as soon as we group up and join a Battleground, the difficulty jump, it's a massive difference, dude. There's such a difference between an actual pre-made versus 4 yes. Decent random players.
Yeah, very much.
And the point I always make is when we were actually in a pre-made group, a full 4-man pre-made group, we usually lost the matches that we would play in.
Yeah.
Right? We were up against such good players, such good other pre-mades. We lost more matches than we won most of the time.
Yeah. That's very true.
So I feel like the perception for the pre-made thing is just all over the map, and I think Zos is well aware of that, and they're just trying to appease players' perceptions of what's going on.
I think a lobby system would go a long way to solving that, because
it'd be so nice.
I mean, we hit 270 people in a Dasher last night, all high MMRPG players. That's enough for every night for us to form our own lobbies and play against each other. It doesn't need to be rewards or anything like that.
I would love that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Just like a basic lobby system like was in Halo or any other modern game in the last 30 years would be just such a great change.
I think that's the thing that surprises me the most about this, is that there's so many games out there that have figured out this issue that I'm surprised that we're having this issue, I guess. I hope they bring back grouping.
Yeah, I'll second that. Even just a lobby system.
Just something.
The one thing we had this idea on the podcast before, but I want to mention it again because I think it would be so cool. Caliban, let me know what you think. Davies and I talked about this before. So we have the Ring of Mara, right? That you can marry someone and get an XP bonus. So
I see where this is going.
What if we had an arch nemesis situation where you could designate Davies is my nemesis, and anytime I see him in the game, no matter where I see him, we're aggroed. He has a red outline and we can attack each other. That would be awesome.
That would be so much fun.
That would be so awesome.
So much fun.
It would lead to so much griefing though, because
well, you could turn it off, I don't know.
Oh, right, okay.
I imagine maybe someone teabags me at Imperial City and I get mad and I invite them to be my nemesis. And then, 6 months pass. I'm just out. I'm questing. I'm in Greymoor. And then all of a sudden, hold on. Who's that? Oh my God, that's that guy. I'm going to go get him right now. That dude teabagged me. That could be cool.
It'd be so hilarious. Especially now, too. Can you imagine just doing some antiquities? You're out digging somewhere and all of a sudden some DK just leaps on you out of nowhere.
I would love it.
I think optional flagged zones would be pretty fun. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
like where you could basically flag yourself for PvP in like Overland or something.
Yeah, we've also cool. Me and Ket have also talked about that if in housing, if you could just turn on like a full-on brawl mode, so everybody in the house can just start going at it.
Even better for the solution to group queues is basically form teams and then
group dueling would be sweet. Yeah. So many cool things.
Houses have what, 20 something people in there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a few spectators even.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So we're just about to the end here. There's a couple of shout outs I want to have here. So we got another real email from a real listener. Can you believe it? We're a real podcast now. It's like 2 weeks in a row, or 3 maybe even. We're getting emails. So this is from Brad, and he says, with ESO having so much content, how should players who can only dedicate about 8 to 10 hours a week approach the game and actually progress? He says, I'm a 29-year-old, married, and have 2 awesome kids. ESO is one of my favorite games of all time, but I feel like it's so hard to accomplish the goals I have for the game with the time that I have to play. Thanks and stay safe.
I would say the biggest thing is, I don't know where Brad's at in the game, but I personally loved my way that I kind of started with ESO. Is I think it's fantastic if you're starting out or you're real early on. Just stick to PvE. Stick to building up gear sets, building up supplies, learning mechanics, learning class abilities. Skill abilities, skill bars, things like that. And then once you kind of, there's so much content that, and there's so much fun with PvE. And then kind of once you get to the point where you're, I don't know, feeling like you've accomplished PvE, or you feel good about it, or you feel like you're repeating some things, I feel like that's the best time to kind of open the doors into PvP, because it's kind of this whole new side of the game. And if you've done PvP enough, then it really, you kind of know enough, you have enough experience with characters and abilities and things like that, that you can just switch to PvP, and then you've got all those gear sets and you've got the items to put builds together and go down that road.
I do agree with you. One thing I will add on to that is there's been an influx of a lot of really good crafted sets. So if you want a PvP and you're not very experienced, crafted sets like Julianos or Newman Acolyte, and there's no CP PvP. Battlegrounds are no CP. There's an Imperial City that's no CP. Cyrodiil as well. So, I mean, it's accessible if you're willing to put in a little bit of time to like understanding what you need in a build. And crafted gear sets work just as well as dropped ones.
Yeah. That's a great point. If you want to just start and go straight into PvP, if you get some gold and with the crafted sets and some overland sets, then you're set.
I mean, I know players like myself who basically craft starter set or used to back when I was part of a PvE guild that craft starter sets for free for people. So there's usually a crafter or two in any guild that'll do that for you.
Yeah, I also think it's good to keep in mind that it's a game that never ends, and there's not really an end goal that you're ever really trying to get to. And for me, I've had several different sort of phases in this game, and it's become like 3 or 4 different games to me over time. When I first started playing, I was just questing. I wanted more Skyrim content, basically, is what I was after, and I was just exploring the map, doing quests, and I wasn't even really aware of the other things you could do in this game for the longest time. And so that's all I did. And then I eventually kind of sort of became aware of doing like dungeons and undaunted pledges. So I started getting into that, and I was just kind of zeroed in and focused on only that for quite a while. And that was enough for me to keep having fun and keep coming back day after day. Eventually I got my fill of that and started dipping my toe into PvP and just different things. It seems like every time I get to a point where I feel like, I've played plenty of this game. I know what this game is all about. Something else happens or some other aspect of the game hooks me, and then that's what I'm interested in now. And so like now I hardly ever do undaunted pledges unless I need to for some reason. But that's something that I have a lot of experience in the past. I know all about that, and if I ever need to go back to it, I can. But for now, I have these new things that I'm interested in. So you can kind of, you don't have to try to juggle all these different things at once. You can just kind of focus all your attention on this 1 or 2 things that you're interested in right now, get your fill of it, move on to another aspect later. That's probably a good way to go.
And I will say the perception of progression in this game doesn't really exist. Like, other than the level cap, there's not really like an end state where you've got everything and you're done. So
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I would say just don't even worry about it too much and just log in, do whatever I think seems appealing to you in that moment, and go on with it. Yeah, thanks for writing in, Brad. Appreciate it, man. If anyone wants to write us, you can write scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. That's scrollin with an I-N, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions or just things you want to say, you have a joke you want to tell, anything like that, or a correction, maybe we're factually incorrect about something we've said on the podcast today. If you want to politely correct that, go right ahead. I'd also like to give another shout out to our guild member Grizzly Khan for hooking us up with the sweet furnishing items so we can make our Stoons shrine in the guild hall. So that is there. It exists. Grizzly hooked us up with those things. It's really nice of him. Thank you so much, dude. I think we're about at the end here. Davius, if people would like to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Just send me something in game. It's at Starjumper. We're usually on. Just reach out anytime about anything. Questions, invite to the guild. If you want to go down to Imperial City.
Sweet. And Caliban, if people would like to get a hold of you, ask any questions, is there some way they can do that?
Yeah, if you want to apply to Dastra, we take most people. Just don't leave an empty application. We are listed. We are the largest BG guild NA, and through guild chat, I'm always available pretty much. I'm working from home, so not much else to do.
Yeah, and so that's the guild name is Adastra, Adastra. Really awesome guild. It's seriously my favorite guild. Really cool people in there. And like I said earlier, if you're looking for a really good PvP guild with some super talented players that really is minimal on the toxicity, really great guild to be a part of.
Yeah. I have to echo all that. It's a fantastic PvP guild, one of my favorite guilds as well, and just a wealth of really talented PvP players in there.
Yeah. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can hit me up in-game at KetSparrowHawk. Reminder that the music is available on SoundCloud as well, so I'll put a link to that in the description, and I think that is the end of the show. Thank you very much for listening.